Welcome to your complete ICSE guide to The Merchant of Venice, where we don't just read the play, we understand it, analyze it, and prepare to score full marks in the exam. In this series, you'll get simple scene-by-scene explanations, ICSE-style questions and answers, important themes, characters, and exam tips. So, whether you're revising or starting fresh, you're in the right place. Let's begin with Act 1, Scene 1. Act 1, Scene 1, opens in Venice and introduces the central characters and the main conflict of the play. Antonio, a wealthy merchant, is seen in a state of unexplained sadness. His friends, Salarino and Solanio, try to guess the reason for his melancholy. They suggest that he may be worried about his merchant ships at sea, which carry his fortune. However, Antonio denies this and also rejects the idea that he is in love. His sadness remains a mystery, highlighting his introspective nature. Soon, Bassanio, Antonio's close friend, arrives along with Gratiano and Lorenzo. Gratiano comments on Antonio's serious mood and advises him to be more cheerful, contrasting his lively personality with Antonio's quiet sadness. After Gratiano and Lorenzo leave, Bassanio confesses to Antonio that he is in debt due to his extravagant lifestyle. He reveals his plan to travel to Belmont to woo Portia, a wealthy and beautiful heiress. Bassanio believes that if he succeeds in marrying her, he can repay all his debts. Antonio, despite having all his wealth invested in ships at sea and lacking ready cash, promises to help Bassanio. He offers his full support and asks Bassanio to borrow money in his name. This act of friendship sets the foundation for the bond agreement that drives the plot forward. In this section, we've carefully designed questions based on actual ICSE patterns, covering reference to context, character analysis, themes and key concepts, and high-scoring analytical answers. The goal is simple, not just to understand the scene, but to be fully exam-ready. We've tried to collate all possible question patterns that can come from this scene. However, learning is always a two-way process. So if you have any feedback, suggestions, or questions, do share them in the comment section. We'll make sure to respond at the earliest. And if you find this helpful, don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more ICSE English content. Let's get started with the questions. Let us begin with Extract 1. In sooth I know not why I am so sad. Now, who speaks these words? To whom, and what is the situation? These words are spoken by Antonio to his friends Salarino and Solanio. This is the opening of the play. Antonio appears unusually sad and thoughtful, and his friends are trying to understand the reason behind his sadness. Next, let us understand the meaning of the line. Antonio is saying that he does not know why he feels sad. This sadness troubles him deeply and even confuses him. He feels mentally burdened and is unable to explain his emotions. This shows that his sadness is not caused by any obvious external reason. Now, what reasons do Salarino and Solanio suggest for his sadness? Salarino suggests that Antonio is worried about his merchant ships at sea. These ships carry valuable goods and are exposed to danger such as storms and shipwrecks. Solanio agrees and adds that any merchant would naturally feel anxious in such a situation. Both of them believe that Antonio's sadness is due to fear of financial loss. How does Antonio respond to their suggestions, and what does this reveal about him? Antonio denies that his sadness is related to his business. He explains that his investments are spread across different ships and places, so he is not overly worried about losses. This shows that Antonio is calm, confident, and not overly attached to wealth. At the same time, it deepens the mystery of his sadness. Finally, why is this opening important to the play? This opening is important because it sets the emotional tone of the play. Antonio's unexplained sadness creates a sense of mystery and hints at future problems. It also introduces themes such as inner conflict and uncertainty, and helps establish Antonio's character as serious and thoughtful. Let us now move to Extract 2. Your mind is tossing on the ocean. Who says this and what does he mean? These words are spoken by Salarino. He suggests that Antonio's thoughts are constantly occupied with his ships sailing in the sea. He believes that Antonio is mentally disturbed because he is worried about their safety. Now, let us look at the imagery used in this speech. Salarino uses vivid imagery by comparing Antonio's ships to wealthy noblemen or grand vessels sailing proudly across the sea. Smaller ships appear to bow before them, as if showing respect. This imagery highlights the importance and grandeur of Antonio's business. How does this speech reflect the risks of trade? The speech shows that sea trade is uncertain and risky. Ships can face dangers such as storms, rocks, and sinking. Since Antonio's wealth depends on these ships, any loss could be disastrous. This reflects the unstable nature of commerce during that time. Why is this passage dramatically important? This passage introduces the theme of risk and uncertainty, which is central to the play. It also foreshadows Antonio's later financial troubles and helps the audience understand the economic background of Venice. Now, let us move to Extract 3. I hold the world, but as the world, Gratiano. Who speaks these words, and in what context? These words are spoken by Antonio to Gratiano. Gratiano has been advising Antonio to be more cheerful, and in response, Antonio expresses his philosophical view of life. What is the meaning of the line, "A stage where every man must play a part"? Antonio compares life to a stage where every person has a role to perform. He believes that his role is that of a sad man. This shows that he accepts his melancholic nature as a part of his identity. What contrast is created between Antonio and Gratiano? Antonio is serious, thoughtful, and reserved, while Gratiano is lively, talkative, and cheerful. Gratiano believes in enjoying life, whereas Antonio accepts sadness as part of his personality. What does this reveal about Antonio's character? This reveals that Antonio is philosophical and introspective. He sees life in a serious manner and accepts his emotions rather than trying to change them. It also shows that he is somewhat detached from worldly pleasures. Finally, let us look at Extract 4. In my school days, when I had lost one shaft. Who speaks these words and to whom? These words are spoken by Bassanio to Antonio. Now, explain the arrow metaphor. Bassanio compares his situation to losing an arrow in childhood. He says that by shooting another arrow in the same direction, he often found both. In the same way, he suggests that borrowing more money will help him recover his previous losses. What does this reveal about Bassanio's character? This shows that Bassanio is optimistic and persuasive. However, it also reveals that he is somewhat irresponsible, as he prefers borrowing more money instead of managing his finances carefully. How does Antonio respond, and why is it significant? Antonio responds generously and assures Bassanio that he will help him without hesitation. He even offers his credit to arrange the money. This highlights Antonio's deep friendship and selfless nature. It also sets the stage for the bond with Shylock, which becomes the central conflict of the play. In this part of the lesson, we will focus on character analysis and motivation, followed by important themes and analytical questions from Act 1, Scene 1, of The Merchant of Venice. As always, pay attention to how each answer is structured and explained, because this is exactly how you should present your answers in the examination. Let us begin with the first question. What impression do you form of Antonio in the scene? Antonio is presented as a complex and deeply introspective character. Right at the beginning of the play, he expresses an unexplained sadness, which creates a sense of mystery around him. This is not an ordinary sadness with a clear reason. Instead, it appears to be philosophical and internal. He clearly rejects the idea that his sadness is due to business worries, even though his wealth is invested in ships at sea. This shows that he is not materialistic and does not allow financial risks to control his emotions. It highlights his calm and composed nature. Antonio also denies being in love, which further deepens the ambiguity surrounding his mood. This suggests that his sadness comes from a deeper emotional or existential cause rather than any specific situation. One of Antonio's most important qualities is his loyalty and generosity. When Bassanio shares his financial problems, Antonio immediately offers help without hesitation. He is even willing to risk his entire credit and fortune for his friend. This shows that he values friendship more than wealth. Antonio also reveals a philosophical side when he describes the world as a stage where every person has a role to play. He accepts his role as a sad man, which shows a reflective and somewhat resigned attitude towards life. Overall, Antonio emerges as a melancholic, generous, loyal, and philosophical character whose emotional depth makes him one of the most serious figures in the play. Now, let us move to the second question. Analyze the character of Bassanio as revealed in this scene. Bassanio is shown as a charming but financially irresponsible young man. He openly admits that he has wasted his wealth by living beyond his means. This honesty is important, but it also reveals his careless attitude towards money. At the same time, Bassanio is ambitious and hopeful. He wishes to go to Belmont to marry Portia, a wealthy heiress. His plan reflects both romantic interest and practical thinking, as he hopes that marriage will improve his financial condition. He is also intelligent and persuasive in his speech. His example of the arrow is a clever way of explaining his idea of borrowing more money to recover previous losses. This shows his ability to convince others through simple and relatable reasoning. However, his dependence on Antonio highlights his irresponsibility. Instead of solving his financial problems on his own, he relies on his friend's support. Despite this, Bassanio is not selfish. He clearly acknowledges his debt to Antonio, both financially and emotionally. This shows that he values their friendship and does not take it for granted. Therefore, Bassanio can be understood as a well-meaning but extravagant, optimistic, and persuasive character whose actions play a key role in moving the story forward. Now, let us look at the third question. What role does Gratiano play in this scene? What does his speech reveal? Gratiano plays the role of a lively and humorous character who contrasts sharply with Antonio's serious nature. His main function in this scene is to provide comic relief and balance the emotional tone. He criticizes Antonio for being too serious and advises him to enjoy life more. According to Gratiano, excessive seriousness leads to unnecessary sadness. Through his speech, he promotes a cheerful and carefree attitude. He also mocks people who pretend to be wise by remaining silent. He suggests that such people are often considered intelligent simply because they do not speak, even though they may not have anything meaningful to say. Gratiano's personality is energetic and talkative. His speeches are long and filled with wit and humor. However, Antonio later comments that Gratiano often speaks a lot without saying much of real value. Even so, Gratiano is important because he adds humor and liveliness to the scene, challenges Antonio's serious outlook, and represents a more optimistic and social approach to life. Thus, Gratiano can be seen as a comic yet insightful character who highlights the contrast between seriousness and joy. Now, let us move to the next question. Compare Antonio and Gratiano, as presented in this scene. Antonio and Gratiano are complete opposites in their personalities and outlook on life. Antonio is serious, quiet, and introspective. He is thoughtful and accepts sadness as a part of his nature. His speech is calm and philosophical, showing his depth of thinking. On the other hand, Gratiano is lively, talkative, and humorous. He believes in enjoying life and criticizes those who remain serious without reason. His speech is energetic and full of wit. Antonio speaks only when necessary, while Gratiano speaks excessively and often without much substance. Antonio values reflection, whereas Gratiano values expression and social interaction. Despite these differences, both characters are important. Antonio represents emotional depth and loyalty, while Gratiano brings humor and balance to the play. This contrast highlights an important idea, that different people have different temperaments, and both seriousness and cheerfulness have their place in life. Now, let us move to part 3, which focuses on themes and analytical questions. The next question is, how is friendship portrayed in Act 1, Scene 1? Friendship is one of the most important themes introduced in this scene, mainly through the relationship between Antonio and Bassanio. Antonio's willingness to help Bassanio without hesitation shows deep trust and loyalty. Even though he does not have ready money, he offers his credit and is willing to risk his entire fortune. Bassanio, in return, respects Antonio and openly acknowledges his debt. He approaches him honestly and shares his plans clearly, which shows mutual trust. Their friendship is not based on selfish benefit, but on genuine care and affection. Antonio's actions show that true friendship involves sacrifice and unconditional support. This theme becomes even more important later in the play, when Antonio risks his life for Bassanio. Therefore, this scene lays the foundation for the development of this central theme. Now, let us look at the next question. Discuss the theme of wealth and risk in this scene. The theme of wealth and risk is introduced through the discussion of Antonio's ships and business. Salarino and Solenio describe how ships at sea face many dangers, such as storms, rocks, and shallow waters. This highlights the uncertainty and risks involved in trade. Antonio, however, shows a different attitude. He is not overly worried because his investments are spread out. This shows his experience and confidence as a merchant. Bassanio represents another side of wealth, mismanagement. His financial problems are the result of overspending, which shows how wealth can be lost through irresponsibility. Thus, the scene presents wealth as unstable and closely connected to risk, whether through external dangers or personal mistakes. Now, let us consider the next question. Antonio's sadness is symbolic rather than personal.
Discuss.
Antonio's sadness can be seen as symbolic rather than purely personal. He clearly states that his sadness is not due to business or love. This suggests that it is not caused by any immediate external reason. Instead, it reflects a deeper emotional or philosophical state. When he says that the world is a stage and he plays a sad role, he presents his sadness as part of a larger view of life. This gives his emotions a universal meaning. It may represent the uncertainties of life, the burden of responsibility, or a sense of emptiness despite success. Therefore, Antonio's sadness goes beyond the individual and represents a broader human experience, making it symbolic in nature. Finally, let us look at the last question. Why is this scene important to the overall play? Act 1, Scene 1 is very important because it sets the foundation for the entire play. First, it introduces the main characters, Antonio, Bassanio, and Gratiano, and shows their relationships. Second, it sets up the main conflict. Bassanio's need for money and Antonio's willingness to help lead directly to the bond with Shylock, which becomes the central issue of the play. Third, it introduces important themes such as friendship, wealth, risk, and emotional complexity. Finally, the scene establishes the tone of the play by combining seriousness through Antonio's sadness and humor through Gratiano's speech. For all these reasons, this scene is essential for understanding both the characters and the direction of the story. That brings us to the end of this section. Make sure you revise these answers carefully and practice writing them in your own words to score well in your ICSE examinations. In this final part, we will work through a probable ICSE question paper based on Act 1, Scene 1 of The Merchant to Venice. This section is designed exactly like your board exam, so treat it as a practice session and focus on how answers are structured. Let us begin with Section A. Section A, Reference to Context. My ventures are not, in one bottom, trusted. First question. Who speaks these words? To whom? And what prompted this statement? These words are spoken by Antonio to Salarino and Solenio. This statement comes in response to their assumption that Antonio is sad because he is worried about his ships at sea. Now, the second question. Explain the meaning of the line. Antonio is saying that his business investments are spread across different ships and locations. He is not dependent on a single venture, so he does not feel anxious about potential losses. Next question. What does this reveal about Antonio's attitude to wealth? This shows that Antonio is practical and experienced in business. He understands risk management and has diversified his investments. It also suggests that he is not overly attached to wealth and does not let money control his emotions. Now, the fourth question. What contrast is created between Antonio and his friends here? Antonio appears calm, confident, and rational. In contrast, his friends are anxious and imaginative. They exaggerate the dangers of sea trade, while Antonio remains composed and realistic. Now, the final question in this section. How does this extract contribute to the theme of risk and uncertainty? This extract highlights the unpredictable nature of trade. Even though Antonio tries to appear confident, The repeated references to ships and dangers remind us of the risks involved. This also foreshadows future financial trouble and builds tension in the play. Now, let us move to Section B. Section B, short analytical questions. First question. Why does Bassanio seek Antonio's help instead of solving his problem himself? Bassanio turns to Antonio because he is financially irresponsible and has already used up his own resources. He trusts Antonio deeply and knows that Antonio is generous. At the same time, Bassanio believes that his plan to marry Portia will succeed, so he considers borrowing money to be a temporary solution. His dependence on Antonio also highlights the strong bond of friendship between them. However, it also shows his inability to manage his finances independently. Next question. How does Gratiano's speech add both humor and meaning to the scene? Gratiano adds humor through his lively and exaggerated style of speaking. His comments about serious people pretending to be wise create a sense of comic relief. At the same time, his speech carries deeper meaning. He criticizes artificial seriousness and encourages people to enjoy life. This provides a contrast to Antonio's melancholy and adds depth to the scene. Thus, Gratiano's speech is both entertaining and thought-provoking. Next question. Explain the significance of Bassanio's plan to go to Belmont. Bassanio's plan is important because it introduces the subplot involving Portia. His desire to marry her sets the story in motion. It also leads to Antonio borrowing money on his behalf, which results in the bond with Shylock. This becomes the central conflict of the play. Therefore, this plan connects the themes of love, wealth, and risk, making it a crucial turning point in the story. Now, let us move to Section C. Section C, long answer questions. First question. Antonio's generosity is both his strength and weakness. Discuss with reference to this scene. Antonio's generosity is clearly seen when he agrees to help Bassanio without hesitation. He offers not only his support but also his credit, even though he does not have ready money. This shows his deep loyalty and selfless nature. His willingness to risk everything for his friend makes him admirable and highlights the theme of true friendship. It shows that he values relationships more than wealth. However, this same quality can also be seen as a weakness. Antonio does not fully consider the risks involved in borrowing money without having sufficient funds available. His emotional decision exposes him to danger. This ultimately leads to the bond with Shylock, which later puts his life at risk. Therefore, Antonio's generosity is both a strength because it shows his noble character and a weakness because it leads to serious consequences. Now, the final question. Examine the role of contrast in Act 1, Scene 1. Contrast plays a very important role in making this scene engaging and meaningful. The most important contrast is between Antonio and Gratiano. Antonio is serious, quiet, and melancholic, while Gratiano is cheerful, talkative, and lively. This highlights different attitudes towards life. There is also a contrast between appearance and reality. Antonio appears calm about his business, but the repeated references to ships suggest hidden risks. Another contrast is seen in Bassanio's character. He is ambitious and dreams of success, but at the same time, he is financially irresponsible and depends on others. These contrasts add depth to the characters and help develop important themes such as friendship, risk, and human nature. That brings us to the end of this probable question paper discussion. Make sure you practice writing these answers in your own words and structure them clearly, as that is the key to scoring well in your ICSE examinations. If you have followed this session carefully, you now have a strong understanding of the extracts, character analysis, important themes, and how to attempt both short and long answer questions in your ICSE examination. Before you go, here is something important. Do not just memorize these answers. Try to understand the structure, the explanation style, and practice writing them in your own words. That is what will help you score high marks. If you found this video helpful, do share your feedback in the comments section. We would love to hear from you and help you further. Also, consider subscribing to the channel for more ICSE-focused lessons, detailed explanations, and exam-ready content. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next lesson.